On the edge of human-controlled space, Commander Arya Voss stood motionless before the panoramic view screen of Titan Station. The vast expanse of Cerulean stretched below a gleaming blue jewel against the void home to Earth Alliance Command and humanity's first line of interstellar defense. Her reflection stared back at her from the reinforced glass, sharp eyes, military-cropped dark hair, and the unmistakable bearing of someone who had seen the darkness between stars and survived to tell the tale. "Commander, we're receiving an anomalous signal through the deep space array." Lieutenant Sarah Kay's voice broke the silence, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface with practiced precision. "It's unusual, not matching any known protocol." Voss turned, her interest peaked. As overseer of the Deep Space Monitoring Network, unusual signals were both her responsibility and her obsession. "Source: the Zalcor system, Commander. It's faint, but definitely artificial." The Zalcor, an aquatic species inhabiting a distant, oceanic world. They were known to Earth only through limited diplomatic exchanges, their civilization largely a mystery beneath their vast, turbulent seas. "Put it through," Voss ordered, moving to the central command console. The signal emerged as pulses of blue light across the display, translating into a simple, yet chilling message. "Save us before darkness erases all light." Captain Rian Holt, Voss's intelligence officer and closest confidant, joined her at the console. His weathered face betrayed nothing, but his eyes narrowed as he studied the pattern. "This signal structure, I've seen something similar before." "Where?" Voss asked, though she already suspected the answer. "The Frontier incident, 30 years ago." His voice dropped heavy, with memories of humanity's bloodiest interstellar engagement, one that had forged Earth's reputation as Deathworlders across the galaxy. Voss's fingers tightened on the edge of the console. "Analysis." Lieutenant Kay worked her station with methodical efficiency. "The transmission contains embedded data packets. They're attack patterns, Commander. Orbital bombardment signatures, invasion vectors. Cross-reference with known hostiles." Voss ordered, her mind racing through possibilities. Kay's gasp was audible even across the command deck. "Confirmed match Vorthak Empire." The name hung in the air like a specter. The Vorthak, a shadowy regime that had once threatened to sweep across the galaxy until humanity had halted their advance at terrible cost. The diplomatic corps had declared them contained, reduced to a minor power after the Frontier War. Apparently, the diplomats had been wrong. "How long until they reach Zalcor's primary settlements?" Voss asked, already moving toward the tactical display. "If these attack patterns are current, 72 hours, Commander." Voss straightened, decision crystallizing. "Prepare a briefing for the Strategic Council, full threat assessment, and activate the Deathworlder fleet protocols." Holt stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Commander, the Council issued a suspension of military engagement after the last border incident. We're under peacekeeping restrictions." "I'm aware of the restrictions, Captain." Voss met his gaze unflinchingly. "But I'm also aware that Zalcor sits at a strategic crossroads. If it falls to the Vorthak, 3 peaceful systems become vulnerable. And if this is truly them," she gestured to the pulsing signal, "then they've violated the Accords first." "The Council might not see it that way." "Then I'll make them see." Voss's voice was steel. "Prepare the briefing, I'll take full responsibility." As Holt departed, Voss turned back to the view screen, watching as Cerulea's sun cast long shadows across the planet's surface. She had been a junior officer during the Frontier incident, had seen firsthand what the Vorthak were capable of. The diplomatic corps might have forgotten, comfortable in their orbital offices, but those who had fought, those who had survived, remembered. The Zalcor had sent their plea to humanity for a reason. The galaxy knew what Earth's children were, descendants of a punishing world, evolved through countless trials of fire and ice. Deathworlders they called humans, beings who had survived a planet that should have killed them 1,000 times over. And now the Deathworlders would answer. The Strategic Council chamber buzzed with tension as Voss concluded her presentation. 8 stern faces regarded her from their elevated semicircular dais, the light from the holographic displays casting their features in harsh relief. "You're proposing a direct military intervention." Admiral Takahashi stated, his voice neutral, but his disapproval evident. "In clear violation of the Galactic Peace Accord. I'm proposing we honor our mutual defense responsibilities," Voss countered, standing her ground before the Council. "The Zal Corps sought our help specifically. Their transmission patterns indicate they bypassed closer systems to reach us. Because they know our reputation," Councillor Equency said softly. The Nigerian diplomat's eyes were calculating. "They want the Deathworlders. With respect, Councillor, they want to survive." Voss nodded to Lieutenant K, who brought up a new set of projections. "These are the attack patterns extracted from the Zal Corps transmission. And these," another display appeared alongside the first, "are the Vorthak invasion tactics from the Frontier incident. The correlation is 97%. A murmur ran through the Council. Admiral Takahashi leaned forward. "If the Vorthak have remilitarized to this extent, why haven't our intelligence networks detected it?" "Because we stopped looking," Captain Holt stepped forward, his presence lending weight to Voss's argument. "After the peace accords, deep surveillance of Vorthak space was scaled back. We focused on border monitoring only." "As the accords required," Councillor Joe reminded them sharply. "Yes," Holt acknowledged, "but the Vorthak clearly didn't adhere to the same restrictions. They've been rebuilding, and they chose Zal Corps as their first target precisely because it sits outside our direct sphere of influence. They're testing us." Voss brought up a galactic map, highlighting trade routes and strategic positions. "If Zal Corps falls, the Vorthak gain a foothold in the Cambrian sector. 3 peaceful star systems become vulnerable, and our supply lines to the outer colonies are compromised." "You're making a strategic argument for an ethical decision," Equency observed. "Because both strategy and ethics point to the same conclusion," Voss replied, without hesitation. "The Zal Corps are facing extinction. They've asked for our help, and if we stand by and watch them fall, we not only betray their trust, but weaken our own position." A heavy silence fell over the chamber as the Council members exchanged glances. Finally, Admiral Takahashi spoke. "Commander Voss, you realize what you're asking. The activation of a Deathworlder fleet would require overriding the peacekeeping protocols. The diplomatic fallout could be significant." "I understand, Admiral, and I'm prepared to bear full responsibility." Takahashi studied her for a long moment. "How quickly can your fleet be ready?" Voss felt a surge of grim satisfaction. 40 ships are already on standby rotation. We can deploy within 12 hours and reach Zal Corps space in under 60. "Just in time," Equency mused. "Or just too late," Joe countered. "And either way, we risk restarting a war." "With respect, Councillor Voss," said her voice steady, "the war has already restarted. The only question is whether we let the Zal Corps face it alone." After a tense deliberation, the vote came 5-3 in favor of deployment. Voss received her authorization codes with a curt nod, already mentally preparing for what lay ahead. As she left the chamber, Captain Holt fell into step beside her. "That was quite a performance." "It wasn't a performance." Voss quickened her pace, heading toward the command deck. "Everything I said was true." "Including the part about bearing full responsibility?" Holt asked quietly. "Because once we commit the fleet, there's no going back. The Vorthak won't distinguish between Commander Arya Voss and Earth Alliance." Voss stopped, turning to face her old friend. "Do you remember Outpost Sigma during the Frontier incident?" Holt's expression darkened. "Every night in my dreams." "Then you know why we can't let this happen again. Not to anyone." She resumed, walking her stride purposeful. "Assemble the fleet commanders. I want battle plans drawn up within the hour." "What about the Zal Corps? Should we respond to their SOS?" Voss shook her head. "No response. Any transmission might alert the Vorthak that help is coming." Her lips curved in a grim smile. "Let's make our answer a surprise." The staging area hummed with controlled chaos as the Deathworlder fleet prepared for deployment. 40 warships ranging from swift corvettes to the massive dreadnought Thermopylae moved into formation around Titan Station. Each vessel represented the pinnacle of human military engineering designs, forged in the crucible of the frontier war and refined through decades of technological advancement. On the command deck of her flagship, the Nemesis Commander Voss reviewed the final preparations. The ship's neural interface linked directly to her tactical implants, providing real-time updates on every aspect of the fleet's readiness. Strike teams are aboard and prepped. Lieutenant K reported her usual technical precision, tinged with nervous energy. As the fleet's communications specialist and cyber warfare expert, she would be essential for countering Vorthak technology. Stealth scouts will launch ahead of the main force to establish a forward observation network. Good. Voss turned to the holographic representation of the Zalcor system floating before her. The aquatic world rotated slowly, its vast oceanic surface broken only by scattered archipelagos where the Zalcor had established their surface colonies. Beneath those waters lay the true civilization, floating cities and deep-sea settlements housing billions of sentient beings. Latest intelligence assessment, she asked, addressing Captain Holt. He gestured and the hologram transformed, overlaying projected Vorthak positions in ominous red. They're establishing an orbital blockade here and here. Preliminary bombardment has already begun on the northern hemisphere. They're focusing on communication hubs and defense installations first. Standard Vorthak protocol, Voss noted grimly. Cut them off, then move in for the slaughter. There's something else. Holt manipulated the display, zooming in on a massive structure being assembled in Zalcor's orbit. We're not certain of its purpose, but energy readings suggest some kind of psionic amplifier. Voss frowned. The Vorthak were experimenting with mind control technology during the Frontier War. They've apparently perfected it, Holt said. Intelligence believes this is the darkness referenced in the Zalcor distress call, a weapon that targets consciousness itself. The Vorthal conduit. Lieutenant K whispered, her face pale. It was theoretical, a device that could override neurosignals across an entire species. Theoretical until now, Voss said, her resolve hardening. How vulnerable are humans to this technology? Unknown, K admitted. But the Zalcor, with their highly conductive neural networks, would be particularly susceptible. Voss straightened, decision made. Then our priority is clear. The main fleet will engage Vorthak forces, while a special operations team targets that device. She turned to Holt. I want our best people on that mission. You already have them, Commander, he replied, with a grim smile. I've assembled Alpha Team veterans of the frontier, all of them. A notification chimed through the neural interface, final deployment authorization from Earth Command. Voss acknowledged it with a thought, then addressed the assembled officers. We launch in 30 minutes. Our mission parameters are clear. Destroy the Vorthak invasion force, neutralize their weapon, and protect the Zalcor civilization. Her gaze swept across the command deck. Make no mistake, this operation crosses the line established by the peace accords. When we return, there will be consequences. Political fallout, possibly court-martials. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in. Anyone who wishes to remain behind may do so with no mark on their record. Not a single officer moved. Voss nodded, pride momentarily displacing her grim determination. Very well. To your stations. We jump in 28 minutes. As the officers dispersed, Lieutenant K approached hesitantly. Commander, I've been analyzing the Zalcor distress signal more thoroughly. There's something embedded deeper in the code personal signatures. I believe their leadership included them deliberately. Can you isolate them? K nodded, bringing up a new display. There are 12 distinct patterns. Based on our limited knowledge of Zalcor's social structure, these likely represent their Council of Depths, their governing body. They're identifying themselves, Voss realized. Making sure we know who to contact when we arrive. She studied the pulsing patterns thoughtfully. Can you establish a secure channel using these signatures once we reach the system? I believe so, Commander. Good. We'll need local intelligence if we're going to navigate their ocean world effectively. Voss turned back to the tactical display. And, Lieutenant, excellent work. Kay straightened, her confidence visibly bolstered. Thank you, Commander. Left alone on the command deck, Voss took a moment to center herself. The weight of 40 ships and thousands of lives now rested on her shoulders, not to mention the fate of an entire alien civilization. She thought of the frontier incident of the burning outposts and desperate last stands. The Vorthak had shown no mercy then. The Deathworlders would show none now. The jump to Zalcor space was textbook precision, 40 warships materializing in perfect formation just beyond the system's detection grid. Commander Voss felt the familiar disorientation of faster-than-light transition wash over her, then fade as the Nemesis's systems stabilized. Stealth mode engaged, the tactical officer reported. All ships reporting successful transition. Voss nodded, studying the sensor readouts. The Vorthak fleet, 63 vessels of varying sizes, maintained their blockade formation around Zalcor, unaware of the human armada that had just arrived on their flank. They're overconfident, Captain Holt observed, joining her at the tactical display. No long-range patrols, minimal defensive screening. They don't expect opposition, Voss replied. The Zalcor have limited space capability, and the nearest Galactic Alliance outpost is 2 weeks away at standard FTL speeds. She allowed herself a cold smile. Our arrival should come as quite a shock. She opened a secure channel to the fleet. All ships maintain stealth approach. Corvette squadrons. 1 through 4 prepare for attack pattern Epsilon. Cruiser divisions stand by for orbital insertion once the screening vessels are engaged. She turned to Lieutenant Kay. Status of our Zalcor communication attempts. Kay's fingers danced across her console. I've isolated a secure frequency using the embedded signatures. Attempting contact now. After a tense moment, her expression brightened. Connection established, Commander. Audio only. This is Commander Arya Voss of the Earth Alliance vessel Nemesis. Voss spoke clearly. We received your distress call and have come to render assistance. A series of clicks and warbles emerged from the speakers before translating into accented but understandable English. Earth Alliance. Your arrival brings light to darkening waters. I am Elder Morlash of the Council of Depths. Our situation grows dire by the moment. We're aware of the Vorthak blockade and bombardment, Voss replied. We're also detecting a large orbital structure. Can you confirm its purpose? A pause, then. The invaders call it the Vorthal Conduit. 3 surface colonies have already fallen to its influence. Our people turned against each other, their minds no longer their own. Morlash's voice trembled. Those affected become extensions of the Vorthak consciousness, their individuality erased. Voss exchanged a grim look with Holt. Elder Morlash, we're preparing to engage the Vorthak fleet. Can you provide us with information about your defensive capabilities? Any assets we might coordinate with? Our orbital defenses have been destroyed, Morlash replied. But we maintain control of the Deep Haven facility's submerged military installations. They house our remaining defenders and short-range attack craft. Can these craft engage targets in orbit? Limited range only, but they could provide support for your ground forces if needed. Voss hadn't mentioned ground forces, but the Elder had correctly anticipated their strategy. That would be most helpful. We'll coordinate frequencies. One more question, Elder. The Vorthal Conduit, does it have a primary control center? Yes, Morlash confirmed. A central hub aboard the orbital structure. Our intelligence suggests it requires direct neural interfacing to operate. Understood, Voss straightened. Elder, my fleet will engage the Vorthak within the hour. Be prepared for defensive operations. Voss out. As the connection closed, she turned to her officers. Update the attack plan. Primary objective remains the destruction of the Vorthak fleet, but I want a special operations team ready to board that orbital structure. She focused on Lieutenant Kay. You'll accompany the boarding party. If anyone can decipher and disable that mind control technology, It's you. Kay paled slightly, but nodded her acceptance. Captain Holt, you'll lead the orbital assault, Voss continued. I'll coordinate the main fleet engagement. Holt raised an eyebrow. Commander, with respect, fleet regulations stipulate that you should remain aboard the flagship during combat operations. Noted and overridden, Voss replied crisply. This technology represents an existential threat, Captain. I need my best people on both missions, and I need to see that conduit device firsthand. She turned to the tactical display. Now, let's bring our fleet into position. It's time to remind the Vorthak why humans earned the name Deathworlders. The attack began with devastating precision. 4 squadrons of stealth corvettes streaked toward the Vorthak blockade weapons, hot targeting the enemy's sensor arrays and communication nodes. By the time the first explosions blossomed against the vacuum of space, the main human fleet was already accelerating into attack formation. Aboard the Nemesis, Voss directed the assault with cold efficiency. Cruiser divisions target their heavy capital ships. Destroyer squadrons break their formation and isolate stragglers. Dreadnought Thermopylae stand by for primary strike against their command vessel. The space around Zalcor erupted into chaos. Human warships designed for overwhelming force application tore through the surprised Vorthak fleet. Particle beams sliced through armor missile salvos, overwhelmed defensive systems, and kinetic impactors shattered hulls with brutal effectiveness. They're responding, Holt reported, watching, as the Vorthak ships scrambled to reform their defensive lines. Counterattack forming in Sector 7. As expected, Voss nodded. Spring the trap. On her command, a reserve force of heavy destroyers emerged from hiding behind Zalcor's third moon, catching the Vorthak counterattack in a devastating crossfire. Ships crumpled under the assault atmosphere, venting into space alongside debris and bodies. But the Vorthak were not easily defeated. Their ships began to coordinate their initial shock, giving way to disciplined response. Energy weapons of unfamiliar configuration lashed out, punching through human defensive screens with alarming effectiveness. New weapons technology. The tactical officer reported as a human cruiser listed its port side a molten ruin. Some kind of phased energy attack. Our shields aren't calibrated for it. Adapt and overcome, Voss ordered. Transfer shield modulation protocols to all ships. Predictive algorithms to maximum. The battle shifted into a more desperate phase. Human technological superiority began to erode against Vorthak numbers and unexpected weaponry. In the midst of the chaos, Voss monitored the approach of the Special Operations Shuttle carrying Lieutenant K toward the Vorthal conduit. Shuttle Epsilon encountering heavy resistance. Communications reported. Escort fighters engaging. Divert Cruiser Squadron 2 to clear their path. Voss ordered, watching as the massive orbital structure of the conduit loomed larger on the tactical display. Its design was alien and unsettling, a series of interlocking rings surrounding a pulsing core that emitted waves of sickly green energy toward the planet below. Commander. Captain Holt's voice came through the comm, strained but determined. We're taking heavy losses in Sector 4. The Vorthak flagship is deploying some kind of autonomous attack drones. Hold position, Captain. Reinforcements en route. Voss redirected a destroyer squadron to support Holt's embattled forces, then made a decision. Executive Officer Tanner, you have the bridge. Maintain fleet coordination. Tanner blinked in surprise. Commander. I'm joining the boarding party, Voss stated, already moving toward the launch bay. The situation has changed. We need that conduit neutralized immediately. Minutes later, Voss's command shuttle rocketed away from the Nemesis, escorted by a squadron of fighter craft. Through the viewport, she watched the battle unfold across the starfield. Human and Vorthak ships, locked in deadly dance energy weapons, painting lines of destruction against the void. The shuttle docked with the larger Special Operations transport just as it approached the conduit. Lieutenant K greeted her with surprise and evident relief. Commander, I didn't expect... Situation update. Lieutenant Voss cut in donning combat armor as she spoke. Kay gestured to a tactical display, where the boarding team 12 soldiers in powered assault suits studied the conduit schematics. We've identified 3 potential entry points. The central hub is heavily defended, but there's a maintenance access here that might allow a smaller team to bypass the main security. Voss nodded, checking her weapon systems. What's your assessment of the conduit itself? Based on energy readings, it's fully operational, Kay replied grimly. The psionic field is intensifying. I estimate we have less than 30 minutes before it reaches full planetary coverage. Then we move now. Voss addressed the assembled team. Primary objective: reach the control center and disable the conduit. Secondary objective: secure any intelligence on Vorthak plans and capabilities. She met each soldier's gaze. This technology cannot be allowed to spread. If we can't disable it, we destroy it, even if that means going down with it. The infiltration began with explosive precision breaching charges, creating a momentary gap in the conduit's outer hull. The boarding team surged through in 3 fire teams, encountering immediate resistance from Vorthak's security forces. Voss led from the front, her combat reflexes enhanced by neural implants and years of hard-won experience. The Vorthak defenders, tall, gaunt humanoids in sealed environmental suits, fell back before the human assault, clearly unprepared for direct confrontation with Deathworlders. They're not soldiers, Holt observed through the comlink still coordinating the space battle. Technical staff, maybe security forces, but not their elite troops. Their mistake, Voss replied, directing her team deeper into the structure. The interior was a maze of pulsing conduits and strange machinery, all oriented toward the central hub, where the conduit's control systems presumably waited. Lieutenant Kay moved alongside Voss, scanning continuously. I'm detecting massive energy flows converging ahead. That has to be the control center. They fought their way forward, the resistance growing stiffer as they approached their goal. Suddenly, Kay gasped, her scanner displaying new information. Commander, I'm detecting Zalcor life signs, dozens of them in chambers surrounding the central hub. Prisoners? Voss questioned. No. Test subjects. Kay's voice was tight with horror. They're integrating Zalcor neural patterns into the conduit system, using them as biological processors. Rage flashed through Voss, cold and clarifying. Change of plans. Team Bravo, secure those chambers and prepare for evacuation. Team Charlie, set demolition charges throughout the secondary systems. Lieutenant K and Team Alpha, with me, we're taking the control center. The final push to the control center was brutal. Vorthak defenders had established hardened positions, and for the first time Voss encountered their elite troops, augmented warriors whose reflexes nearly matched her own. 3 humans fell before they breached the final barrier, blasting through reinforced doors into the heart of the Vorthal conduit. The control center was a cathedral to malevolence. A raised platform at its center held a neural interface chair currently occupied by a figure that could only be a high-ranking Vorthak. Around the platform, technicians worked at curved consoles, manipulating the cascading flows of psionic energy that pulsed through the structure. Hold position and cover me, Voss ordered, advancing toward the platform. Lieutenant K, work on shutting down those systems. The seated figure turned, regarding Voss with glittering obsidian eyes, set in a face of pale, almost translucent flesh. Commander Arya Voss, he spoke, his voice resonating oddly through the chamber. Your reputation precedes you. Voss, halted weapon, trained unwavering on the Vorthak's center mass. You have me at a disadvantage. A thin smile stretched across features, never meant to mimic human expressions. I am Emperor Vorthak. This encounter has been foreseen. Has it? Voss didn't lower her weapon. Then you know how it ends. Indeed. The Emperor gestured languidly toward the view screens, showing the space battle raging outside. With understanding. With recognition of your true place in the cosmic order. Which is beneath us. Vorthak's smile widened. You humans fancy yourselves Deathworlders proud of evolving on a hostile planet. But we evolved within the psychic plane, where thought itself is predator and prey. Your physical adaptations are impressive, but ultimately irrelevant against beings who can reshape consciousness itself. While he spoke, Voss noted Lieutenant K quietly working at a console, her fingers moving with desperate speed. The other human soldiers maintained their positions, weapons trained on the Vorthak technicians, who had frozen at their stations. If you're so superior, Voss countered, buying time, why the elaborate weapon? Why not simply think us into submission? Vorthak chuckled, a sound like grinding glass. Scale, Commander. Individual manipulation is trivial, but reshaping the collective consciousness of billions requires amplification. He gestured toward the pulsing core, visible beyond the control center's vast windows. The Vorthal conduit is that amplifier, and the Zal core are merely its first test subjects. Before you target humans, Voss surmised. Precisely. Their neural structures are simpler, more malleable. Once perfected, the conduit will be calibrated for more complex minds. His dark eyes gleamed. Including yours. Voss noticed a subtle change in the energy patterns flowing through the chamber. K's work was having an effect. You've miscalculated, Emperor. Humans don't merely survive our death world, we thrive on it. Adaptation isn't just our history, it's our specialty. Bold words from a species about to witness its first subjugated world. Vorthak reached for a control panel. Voss fired in the same instant, her shot striking the Emperor's shoulder. He hissed in pain, but completed his motion, activating a sequence that sent the conduit's energy pulse cascading toward Zal core with renewed intensity. Now, Lieutenant Voss shouted. K executed her override command simultaneously. The conduit system sputtered, energy flows becoming erratic. Warning signals blared throughout the structure. What have you done? Vorthak demanded, rising from his chair. Reverse the neural interface. K explained, a fierce grin of triumph on her face. Your consciousness is now feeding back into the system instead of controlling it. The Emperor screamed as psychic feedback tore through his neural pathways. Around the chamber, the Vorthak technicians clutched their heads, falling to their knees as the backlash spread through their connected systems. Time to leave, Voss ordered, backing toward the exit. Demolition team status. Charges set throughout the secondary systems. Commander, came the response. Ready to detonate on your command. Team Bravo, what about the Zal core prisoners? 28 secured, Commander. En route to evacuation point now. Voss took a final look at Emperor Vorthak, now writhing on the platform, as his own psychic weapon turned against him. Lieutenant K, can you ensure the conduit won't restore functionality? K worked furiously at the console. I'm locking in the feedback loop and encrypting the override. It would take them days to untangle it if they survive that long. Good enough. All teams fall back to extraction point. They retreated through the conduit's corridors, now thrown into disarray, as emergency systems activated, and surviving Vorthak either fled or lay incapacitated from the psychic backlash. When they reached the extraction point, the rescued Zal core were already being loaded onto the transport aquatic humanoids, with iridescent skin and large, expressive eyes that regarded their human rescuers with unmistakable gratitude. Demolition team set final timer for 5 minutes, and withdraw. Voss ordered boarding the transport. As they pulled away from the conduit, Voss contacted the Nemesis. Status report on the fleet engagement. Vorthak forces in disarray, Commander. Executive Officer Tanner reported. Their command structure seems to have collapsed. 17 enemy vessels destroyed, 11 disabled, the rest in retreat. The Vorthal conduit affected their neural network too, Kay realized. The feedback isn't just hurting the Emperor, it's cascading through their entire command structure. Voss watched through the view screen as the transport accelerated away from the massive orbital structure. When they reached safe distance, she gave a single nod. Detonate. The explosions rippled through the conduit and sequenced strategic points, failing catastrophically and triggering chain reactions. The structure broke apart fragments, spinning away into space, as its core energy containment failed, releasing a final pulse that washed harmlessly across the surrounding area. "It's over," Voss said quietly, though she knew better. The Vorthak had been defeated today, but not destroyed. The Emperor might have escaped, and even if he hadn't, others would rise to take his place. This was not an end but a beginning, the first engagement in what might become another protracted conflict. But for now, the Zalkor would survive. The darkness had been pushed back, if only temporarily. "Set course for Zalkor surface colonies," she ordered. "It's time we formally introduced ourselves to our new allies." The aftermath of battle cast long shadows across Zalkor's vast oceans. From the observation deck of a Zalkor floating city, one of the few surface installations to escape major damage, Commander Voss watched as aquatic creatures, similar to Earth's dolphins, leaped from the waves, their bodies catching the rose-gold light of the setting sun. "Beautiful world," Captain Holt remarked, joining her at the panoramic window. His uniform bore the marks of battle scorch marks on one sleeve, a hastily patched tear across the shoulder. "Worth fighting for," Voss agreed. The past 72 hours had been a blur of emergency response damage assessment and diplomatic negotiations. The human fleet had transitioned from combat operations to humanitarian assistance, delivering medical supplies and technical support to the devastated Zalkor colonies. "The Council of Depths has approved the Defense Pact," Holt informed her, handing over a data tablet. "They're grateful, almost reverentially so. The term Deathworlders has taken on a near-mythic quality in their communications." Voss scrolled through the agreement terms. "And Earth Command?" Holt's expression tightened. "Mixed response. Strategic Council is publicly supporting our action as a necessary intervention against Vorthak aggression. Privately, Admiral Takahashi indicates there will be a formal inquiry once we return." As expected, Voss handed back the tablet. "We violated the peace accords regardless of justification." "Worth it?" Holt asked quietly. Voss gestured toward the hall behind them, where injured Zalkor were receiving treatment in a makeshift medical facility. Among them moved Lieutenant K. Her technical expertise now turned to helping the aliens repair their damaged communication systems. "Ask them," Voss said simply. Their conversation was interrupted by the approach of Elder Morlash, the Zalkor leader, gliding forward on a hover platform that simulated the buoyancy he would experience in his natural underwater environment. His iridescent skin shimmered with patterns that expressed emotions beyond what his translated words could convey. "Commander Voss," he greeted, his large eyes blinking in a gesture of respect. "The Council has completed our assessment of the damaged regions. Though 3 coastal cities burned in the Vorthak bombardment, our deep-sea habitations remained largely untouched." "Casualties?" Voss asked. 400,000 confirmed," Morlash replied, grief evident in his undulating skin patterns. "Many more affected by the Vorthal influence, though your Lieutenant K believes the effects will fade now that the conduit has been destroyed." "I'm sorry we couldn't arrive sooner," Voss said, genuinely regretful, despite knowing they had pushed their ships to the absolute limit. Morlash made a gesture that the translator rendered as negation. "You came when no others would. The Galactic Alliance ignored our warnings about Vorthak movements, dismissed our concerns as paranoia." His skin darkened momentarily with anger, before brightening again. "But the Deathworlders heard our call across the stars and answered with fire and salvation." "The Vorthak will return," Voss warned. "Today was a setback for them, not a defeat. They'll rebuild, adapt their strategies." "And when they do, Zalkor will be ready," Morlash asserted. "With your help, we will establish our own defensive perimeter. The agreement provides for human military advisors and technology transfers." "There are conditions," Holt interjected, ever the pragmatist. "Earth Command insists on oversight of any weapon systems, and there are restrictions on how far the technology can spread." "Understandable precautions," Morlash acknowledged. "Trust must be earned on both sides." He turned back to Voss. "But today, Commander, You have earned something perhaps more valuable than trust. You have earned the loyalty of the Zalcor, and we do not forget our debts." As if to emphasize his words, a group of young Zalcor approached their smaller forms, moving with the boundless energy of children. They regarded the humans with wide, curious eyes, unafraid, despite the obvious physiological differences. One of them offered a small object to Voss, a crystalline structure that caught the light in hypnotic patterns. "Our children crafted this for you," Morlash explained. "It is called a memory stone. When submerged in water, it releases patterns that tell the story of this day." Voss accepted the gift with formal gravity, recognizing its significance. "We will display it with honor aboard the Nemesis." The children chattered excitedly, their translator devices struggling to keep pace with their rapid speech. Their enthusiasm was infectious, causing even the battle-hardened Captain Holt to smile. Later, as twilight deepened into night, Voss stood alone on an exterior observation platform, watching as Zalcor's 3 moons rose above the horizon. The ocean stretched endlessly before her, its surface now peaceful, but its depths still holding mysteries humans had barely begun to understand. Lieutenant K found her there, approaching with uncharacteristic hesitation. "Commander, may I speak freely?" "Always, Lieutenant." "I've been analyzing the data we recovered from the Vorthal conduit." K's expression was troubled. "The Vorthak technology was advanced beyond anything we've encountered. Some aspects appear to incorporate principles we don't fully understand." "Your point, Lieutenant." "The Emperor spoke of evolving on the psychic plane." Kay glanced nervously at the data tablet in her hands. What if he wasn't being metaphorical? What if the Vorthak represents something fundamentally different from other sentient species? Voss considered this. "You think we've opened a door we can't close?" "I think we need to understand what we're facing," Kay clarified. "The Frontier incident may have been just the beginning of a much longer conflict." "Then we'll face it prepared," Voss stated firmly. "Your analysis of the conduit technology could give us the edge we need. Work with the Zalcor scientists. They may have insights we lack." Kay nodded her scientific curiosity, overcoming her apprehension. "There's something else, Commander. Before the Emperor activated that final sequence, the conduit scanned our neural patterns. It might have transmitted that data back to Vorthak space." A chill ran through Voss, despite the warm night air. "Meaning they could be adapting the technology specifically for humans." "It's possible," Kay admitted. "I've included a warning in my report to Earth Command." "Good. Keep digging, Lieutenant. I want to know everything you can learn about their capabilities." After Kay departed, Voss remained on the platform, her thoughts turning to the inevitable confrontations that lay ahead. The Vorthak would return perhaps stronger, certainly wiser. The brief flash of victory would fade, replaced by the long, grinding reality of sustained conflict. But that was the nature of survival on a Deathworld: constant vigilance adaptation, and the willingness to fight when necessary. Humanity had carried those traits to the stars, and now they had shared them with the Zalcor. Below, in one of the floating cities, lights began to appear as night deepened, signs of life continuing despite devastation. A message from Captain Holt appeared on Voss's neural interface repair efforts, proceeding ahead of schedule. Zalcor engineers proving remarkably adaptive. She smiled slightly. Perhaps that was the true gift of the Deathworlders, not just the capacity for overwhelming force, but the resilience that came from evolving on a planet that had tried to kill them countless times. The ability to face darkness, push through it, and rebuild in its wake. The Vorthak had sought to erase light with darkness. They had failed to understand that light once kindled is not so easily extinguished. As Zalcor's sun, Cambrian, began to rise again over the eastern horizon, painting the ocean in shades of gold and amber, Commander Arya Voss made a silent promise to the world turning beneath her feet. The Deathworlders would stand sentinel against the coming storm, whatever form it might take. The darkness would return, but so would the dawn.